The media are excited about the opinion polls. They suggest that the advent of Miss Gillard has given the Labour Party the bounce it needs to win a general election. This is not so. These are national polls. They're the first polls taken, and they certainly don't reflect the situation in what are called the mining states. It's interesting to try to understand why Mr. Rudd was removed. He wasn't removed, as Mr. Whitlam was, for a serious breach of the Constitution. He wasn't removed for profligacy, for mismanagement, for incompetence. Those are the marks of all the government. Mr. Rudd, Ms. Gillard, Mr. Tanner and Mr. Swan, in particular, as they were the central ministers in that government and ran it as a small Politburo. Mr. Rudd failed for two reasons. Firstly, he failed because of the advent of Mr. Tony Abbott to the leadership of the opposition. Although Mr. Abbott was derided by the press gallery, he went straight to work. He completely denied Mr. Rudd the apparent advantage of going to Copenhagen with an ETS. Of course, it wouldn't have been an advantage because the Americans, the Chinese and the Indians weren't going to shoot themselves in the foot even if Mr. Rudd came with a great new tax on the Australian people. The second reason Mr. Rudd got into difficulties and eventually had to go was his extraordinary presentation to the mining industry of another great new tax, the super profits tax, without any consultation, without any discussion, without tabling it in the Parliament, and without being able to get the independent advice of Treasury, because he had been sure that was already compromised by having the head of Treasury do the report. Now, Mr. Rudd thought that if he claimed that he were acting on behalf of the people, that he were attacking the rich and powerful miners, the people would be on side. The Australian people are far too clever for that, particularly in rural and regional Australia, the outlying states, and they clearly saw through what was being done. What he has, in effect, done is twofold. Firstly, because he was the preferred candidate of the media, most of the mainstream media protected him for the early part of his government against serious criticism. The result has been, as essential media shows, that the mainline media, the mainstream media, are the least trusted institution in the country. The second thing he did was to unleash federalism, give it a new burst of life in Australia, more than the wildest dreams of the Samuel Griffith Society. Because if there's anything that West Australians, Queenslanders and South Australians know, it's that the minerals of those states are the minerals of the people of those states, and the best people to administer them and see that there's a proper return are the governments of those states, and not a greedy Australian government who will only waste its hands on it. Being in no position to compromise, Mr. Rudd was finished when the power brokers realised that he had lost the election because of the number of seats which would be going away from Labour in Western Australia and Queensland and South Australia. So we have a new Prime Minister, but a Prime Minister with the same old problems. And she has a special problem of her own. It's her credibility. Because she was handed over $16 billion for a fiscal stimulus to be given to the schools as part of the building the education revolution. Miss Gillard failed extraordinarily in doing that. She did not put in place the elementary safeguards which any competent minister would have put in place to ensure that the people got value for money. And when there were complaints about this, she denied the complaints and she attacked those who complained until finally she had to put in place an inquiry, a review, but she put in place one of the weakest possible inquiries, that under Brad Orgill, who has no powers, and who seems to be singing from the same hymn sheet as her, at least in his evidence to the New South Wales Parliament. She will not have an ounce of credibility until she appoints a royal commission to publicly inquire into where those $5 billion went. This is the biggest financial scandal in the history of the Commonwealth of Australia. The second thing she will have to do if she is to have any chance in the election is she has to withdraw the super profits tax. Not compromise, withdraw it, because it's something about which the Commonwealth has no business. The state governments have lost more and more of their income. The state governments have income from royalties relating to minerals. They are in a better position to do this. They are in a better position to provide infrastructure than a government that could not put pink bats in the ceilings of people without having houses catch on fire and without the deplorable deaths of those involved. Ms. Gillard, the $5 billion woman, will have no credibility unless she does those things. Firstly, she must establish a royal commission into the BER $5 billion rort. Secondly, she has to withdraw the super profits tax.